My name is Tita Tambidu, and the title of this session is Keep Your Head Up, Suicide in the Black Community. It's a panel discussion of mental health providers, public health members, and individuals with lived experiences related to suicide and suicidal ideation. So today's session will go as follows. We'll have 5 minutes of welcome remarks, 30 minutes of a moderated panel, 10 minutes of audience Q&A, and 5 minutes of closing remarks. So our moderator for today is Nikita Powell-Cotman. Nikki Powell-Cotman is a devoted mental health advocate and serial entrepreneur. Nikki's faithfulness and obedience to God's plan have grown her ministries of faith and mental wellness throughout her platforms. She has worked in the mental health field for over a decade. Almost losing her daughter several times to suicide, Nikki became passionate about helping preteens and young adults ages 12 to 25 and their parents, caregivers, hoping to keep them from experiencing the pain, loneliness, and confusion, isolation, and emotional roller coaster that she has endured. Nikki received a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology and is currently pursuing her master's in clinical mental health counseling. In 2016, Nikki birthed We Fight Foundation to fight with her daughter, who has mental illness, as well as other parents and caregivers alongside their child to help them develop safe spaces and have effective conversations about mental health. In 2018, Nikki created Rally Up Magazine, a mental health magazine, a platform used to remove the stigmas and normalize conversations globally about mental health. And Nikki and her daughter continue to live by the motto, I fight for you. I fight, you fight, we fight together. Jasmine Brooks is a doctoral candidate in clinical psychology at the University of Houston. Jasmine utilizes mixed methods approaches to examine how race-related stressors influence suicide vulnerability and internalizing mental health disorders within Black populations. Jasmine's current program of research focuses on identifying culturally relevant protective factors that moderate the association between racism-related stress and mental health outcomes for Black youth and emerging adults. She aims to apply her findings to the development of clinical interventions that reduce racial stress and promote psychological well-being within Black communities. Naisha Deed, amid her own journey to healing, Naisha Deed saw the need for spaces where people of color can connect and share their experiences with mental health and wellness. In 2019, she started the organization Pure Spark with the vision of helping you on your journey to finding your pure spark. Naisha began sharing mental health and wellness resources online and later started a weekly forum for those who felt isolated in their struggles. Today, with this launch of its new website, Pure Spark has become Massachusetts' first mental wellness directory for people of color to explore a range of self-care resources like classes and other activities designed to help you thrive in mind, body, and spirit. And last but not least, Angela Frazier is a speaker, founder of Sisters in Public Health, and author of a kids' book about suicide. Angela received her Bachelor's of Science in Health Sciences and Communication from Portland State University. She also holds a Master's of Public Health and Community Health from UT Health School of Public Health. She was honored to represent her graduating class as a 2018 student commencement speaker. Since the loss of her mother to suicide in 2016, she has dedicated her time and efforts to sharing her story by bringing tough topics to the forefront of conversation. This began with the opening of a shelter for survivors of domestic violence in honor of her mother. The Tammy Best Emergency Shelter was created for survivors of domestic violence fleeing abusive situations. And in 2017, Angela founded a nonprofit, Sisters in Public Health, to connect all women in public health. Thank you all so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this session.
So welcome everyone. It's an honor to be on the panel with all you. Just hearing y'all bios, some awesome women, and I just thank you all for just joining us in this conversation. Much needed. We all know it's a very sensitive topic, right? Many of us don't like to even say the word suicide. So I'm excited that we're having this conversation. So to jump start it, let's just start with like, how does a sense of mistrust in the medical community affect Black individuals' disclosure of suicidal ideation?
I can start. So hi, everyone. My name is Naisha Deed. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm the founder of the organization mentioned earlier, Pure Spark. And I think, I don't know, we might go into this a little bit later, but I'm someone that struggled with suicidal ideations and had made an attempt. And it's very scary disclosing it because, unfortunately, mental health is viewed as something that you can control, right? But, obviously, as we all know, if we can control it, we would, right? And we wouldn't be in those situations that we're in. So unfortunately, it's penalized, it's a punitive type of treatment oftentimes. So I am always very scared, or I was very scared to disclose it because I didn't want to be penalized for something that I didn't have control over. I also didn't want to go into inpatient. I was afraid. I was scared because I had heard stories before. We all saw the movie, or some saw the movie, One Floor Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So you're like, what am I about to walk into? How am I going to be treated once I disclose this? Because unfortunately, there's stigma within our community. But there's also stigma at the medical level as well. You can have all these advanced degrees, be of certain socioeconomic backgrounds, but once you disclose that you're ill in a mental way, you're stamped with this, certain view.
So I can jump in that. That's the biggest thing I hear a lot, and I know hearing it even from my daughter. The ultimate fear of just being locked away. Even if you're having a suicidal ideations, they talk about like it's not, not even saying that I may not act on it right away, but I need help to not even get to that point. But not being viewed as a crazy person. First thing you're ready to do is just send me to a hospital, and I'm being sent away immediately. And then now you have all these doctors, like she'll say, just asking all these questions, and you can't even figure out why you're feeling the way you're feeling. You know what I mean? You haven't even got to the source of it yourself. You're just looking for help, so you can just take those thoughts away. And so just that part right there, not wanting to be sent away, that's viewed as crazy or locked away. And then a lot of times she come out because she's had several attempts and still never received the help that she needed.
And I'm going to jump in after that too, because that was going to be one of my points. Is I completely agree that fear of being locked away, but I think that gets at the bigger premise of that fear of not being helped in the way that you need it, whether it's through a lack of understanding of what I'm going through, or like if we're treating suicide ideation, right? It's like, it just comes from feeling like alienated, or it just comes from feeling like a burden. Like there are so many deeper cultural things that can go into that, of like the pressure to always be okay, to pick yourself up, to, as a Black woman, of the stereotypes that can go against that, right? And so I think it's just also not necessarily receiving the treatment that you think you'll need. I know from an experience of a friend as well growing up, that there's the mistrust. If you're a youth, are they going to lock my parents away? Are they going to call CPS? Is this on my parents for not protecting me? Right. So I've heard that too, of like, how is this going to make my family look to people? How is it going to make, and you speak about mistrust again, like, is that going to mean that someone calls CPS on my family because I'm feeling this way? Like, I think that's a question that, especially amongst Black minorities and amongst Black youth, that is a very real thing, that, if you're under 18, that's another barrier to care as well. And so, yeah, those were just some other thoughts I had.
Yeah. And I'm gonna give you a chance, Mrs. Frey, just real quick. The fact is, I was their mother. They kept my daughter locked away longer. Like, it was supposed to be in it's a couple of 12 week session, whatever. She spent like 3 months because we would have these meetings, And they're like feeling like I'm not, I mean, first of all, you're not giving me classes. You're not educating me. I had to educate myself. I changed my profession to psychology. I started eating and sleeping so I can advocate for my daughter. So I started showing up at those meetings with more information and more knowledge. And then they were like, oh, we're dealing with someone different. But they kept her there. She had to do her whole entire 8th grade year in a facility. They was not telling me that they don't feel safe with her coming home with me because I wasn't equipped to care for her.
Exactly. Look at that. Like being told you're not equipped when it's your child struggling and you're here seeking all these things, but you're still not equipped. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's scary. It's
I'm
scary.
very sorry you had to go through that personally, of course. But exactly.
Here now, though. We're here now. This is how you make a difference right here. I'd love to hear from you, Ms. Frazier. What do you have to say?
Yeah, all you guys really touched on it. The only thing I would add to it is just speaking from the experience of being the child, kind of how you're speaking from, being the mother, being the child and having a mother who struggled with suicidal ideation majority of my life. I think she very much so felt like that. Well, I can't say what I'm really going through because I have a child, I have a child, I'm a single mother. And so I'm sure there is fear associated with that on if there is any inpatient, I do recall when she first attempted that I was aware of was my 8th grade year. And I remember that morning was so different driving me to school. I knew her energy was completely off. I actually remember the album was Mary J. Blige's album. And it just was different. Like it was her energy. And we all know how we all get really in tune with music. And that's, one of our outlets. And I just knew instantly when I got back, she didn't come to pick me up and my dad came and he never picked me up from school. And he's like, oh, are you going to stay with me for a couple of days? And I'm like, this is a weekday. My dad had a schedule. It was, every other weekend. So I knew that was off. And I just, recall kind of thinking back on that. And I know that was a fear, once she finally did get released because she was held on suicide watch for a few days. And then again, it occurred my senior year of high school. And she was on suicidal watch for about 30 days. I think she got out. Matter of fact, I know she got out the same week of my high school graduation. We lived in a different state at that time. My dad had to come down to Las Vegas, Nevada, where we were living at that time. And so every time she really kind of, got to that breaking point, the medical community, intervened and, made it to where, we were really separated. And I know she struggled during those times as well. And that's just me looking at it from this child perspective, feeling extremely helpless. And unfortunately, as a kid, you get to feeling like, what could you do differently? And I know it wasn't me, like it was completely something that she was going through and she was battling. But as a kid, you wonder like, gosh, what, when I did this, when I got in trouble here, I didn't clean up enough, you just begin to kind of internalize, seeing your parent struggle in that sense.
I had a glimpse of just that. And this is where we have the problem of not talking about. I can remember coming home and it was during a time that my parents was going through a divorce. I was about 12 and the rope was hanging from this bar or whatever in my, parents' room. And my grandma was by her side with a Bible reading to my mom, but it was never a conversation. Just, that's it. I just had that same, never really connected now as an adult and know more about suicide and suicide ideation. I'm like, wow, that was a moment. And still to this day, no one want to talk about it. That's what hurt, even Black community, don't talk about it. Don't know what led to that, whether she still deals with suicide. You understand what I'm saying? It's really a tough thing. So since we're there, since there are always indicators for possible suicide concerns, what should loved ones do to support someone who is struggling?
I think you touched on a good little bit there, right? The first thing that we need to do is stop not stop encouraging that we can't talk about this, that we just need to pick ourselves up and be okay, that our ancestors just went through this. We can't do this, that we need to pray it away, right? I know, obviously, spirituality, we're encouraging that, but we're not encouraging it to the point where we don't talk about it. And we just are facilitating the get over it and pick yourself up mentality. So breaking the stigma in our families is the first step. We cannot expect society to do it when we're not doing it ourselves.
That's right.
Right. So having these conversations, I think, is step one of creating a space where our children feel comfortable saying, Mommy, Daddy, I am hurting. I don't know what's happening to me. Hurting, right?
Yes.
Step two, right, is when we hear that as parents or as friends or as siblings, we now do what you did, honestly, right? Resources, what can we do? We need to increase our education. Yes, again, part of it is society increasing access, increasing psychoeducation, but sometimes when we're in that spot, it is on us. Our kids don't know what's going on. Our people don't know what's going on. So let's educate ourselves together to figure this out. Let's seek out resources and say it's okay to ask for help.
Yes.
Those are definitely where I think starting out.
Yeah, I think that asking for help also, even as, I just, met with a friend this morning who has been struggling, and, reminding, her that she's not alone. That's, a big thing. I think we get into these headspaces that it's just us. And this, this is, when it's so far from true. Unfortunately, we all battle at different times with our mental health. The reminder about, there's purpose in life, and how missed they would be. And then also realizing at a certain point, for me, I did my master's in public health. My focus was community health, but I'm not a licensed therapist or psychologist, counselor. So I always make sure to, have resources for my friends and family members who are going through it. And even if I was that, sometimes you can't do that for the immediate people in your life, that they need to have other people that they are able to seek out and trusted, because not everybody wants to share, even with the people that they're closest to, when they're battling, suicidal thoughts.
And we have someone who said the importance of a support system, and I'm gonna let Ms. D speak on that, because I want to know where she was with as far as of a support system. How important? Like, what if I wasn't that one who advocated, right, for my daughter? Just let them lock her away. Just send her on her way. I can't deal with this because it's scary. I don't care what no one say. Someone who has mental illness, or even having saying that I don't want to live, no, it's scary. And a lot of times you feel like you're not strong enough to deal with someone who's going through those mental challenges. So a support system is very important. So I want to hear from you, Ms. D, in that aspect. Like, what did that look like for you, your support system?
I was blessed.
Okay.
I know that my situation is very unique. And I'm privileged in that, and I'm aware of that, because if I didn't have my support system, I probably wouldn't be here or be out on the street. And so most of my family is in the New England area, and I moved to DC to go to college, and then I moved back there several years later to continue my career in accounting. And I hated it. I hated accounting. I mean, I made a good amount of money in it, but I just hated my job. And I did it for 15 years. Imagine doing something for 15 years that you don't like. I didn't know how much that would impact my mental health, but it did. So in 2017, I found myself in a very, very dark place. And I could feel it, in October, things were just getting really heavy, and I just wanted an out. But I was like, Naisha, keep pressing on. You got this, girl. I was like trying to talk myself up. Eventually this will go away. This feeling will go away. But obviously, no, it's, kind of percolated, and it got worse. And then I was like, I don't want to go into next year. And, my family kept in contact with me. They're calling me, checking in on me every now and again. You coming up for Thanksgiving? No, I'm stay down here, just chill, And one day they didn't hear from me. And that was the day that I had attempted. And the next day, my family member who's a therapist. I have like several therapists, nurse, doctor in my family. So this is why I say I'm blessed in that sense that they know what to do. So she did a wellness check. She called 911 in the Maryland area. She also called my leasing company. They came and did a check, and I tried to lie at first, but the police officers saw the evidence, and they said, "Ma'am, you need to come with us." And in that instance, my family members and my support system had the knowledge, they had the wherewithal, they took action, they knew what kind of action to take. And then afterwards, they were there just saying, we're here, come with us, stay with us until you get it figured out. I don't care. We know this is not you, Naisha, and we are going to stay by you, love on you, even when you can't love yourself, until you are well. And that's exactly what they did. They didn't try to rush me, even though I tried to rush myself. I'm like, I need to get back into the hustle bustle. Like, what is this depression thing? I can't get out of bed. I can't hardly eat. I'm losing weight. I want to just be well fast. And they're like, no, you're going to be okay. Take your time. You don't got to rush. You don't got to go back to work. You're good. We got you. And I think if we have more of that kind of care, where people are just accepting and loving on you, we'll be okay. If we could all just care and love on each other, no questions asked, just be there. Like, hey, what do you need? Hey, I just need you to sit with me for a second. I just need a hug. I just need a warm cooked meal. I just want to go for a walk, I think if we can remove the judgment, right, and people can come up forth and be their full selves, we would probably see suicide rates go down.
Yes, great point. And everyone who on here, if you have ever had those moments of feeling suicidal and or had attempt, this is a safe space. Thank you, Dr. Busby, for mentioning that. This is definitely a safe space. And I think everyone who's being transparent, we have to be able to the point to remove those masks, that vision of trying to feel strong or act strong, and actually you're dying on the inside. You're giving up on the inside. Being able to create those safe spaces to have this type of dialogue and slowing down, instead of just doing those quick checks for our loved ones, but really not that quick check, but really listening, because I feel like they always be those silent cries, whereas though they're asking for help in their own way. Like you said, sometimes you just didn't know what to say. Like Ms. D was saying, like you just needed someone. You needed to feel that presence of someone supporting you, and not really being able to know what exactly what you don't even know why you feel the way you're feeling. You want to explain it, you want the help, but then it's like just be there for that person and what they need at that time. And simply just asking, what can I do, or how can I just be there for you right now in this moment? So you may not have the answers, you're not that therapist, but you could just be there in the moment and try to help them the best you can. So thank you for sharing. In what ways have personal or family experiences specific to suicide and suicide risk shaped your understanding of suicide in Black communities? If you can share like a major point or viewpoint of this.
Yeah, I can start here.
Okay.
And I think, this can be specific to the Black community, but I think this is just for just a viewpoint in general. After losing my mom to suicide, it can be anyone, my mom, although she was a single mom, she was very successful in her career. I tell people all the time, we had a 5-bedroom home and it was 2 of us. She was pretty well off. She was more in the entertainment side of things. My mom modeled for Playboy. She went back and forth to the Hugh Hefner mansion. She's in magazines. I say this, she was very open about it herself. I remember in middle school, I didn't even know what I had. I mean, my 7th grade birthday, I had Louis bags. I mean, I had it. We had it made, right? Like on the outside, it looked really good, but she was really battling internal happiness. And I just look back on it and I'm just like, man, I see what she was chasing. I see like the Mercedes she drove, like she really was chasing this feeling of feeling good. And we were all, we laugh about the retail therapy, and we all do it at times, like you check out on Amazon, it feels good, you're excited for your package and things like that. But I think when it happened with my mom, because I saw her in this, and you see your parents in a certain light as well, but then to also see that it always seemed like she had everything together. I remember her aunts and her sister, her siblings, everyone was just in shock. It was really shocking when we all knew of her. Her first attempt, like I said, was in 8th grade, and I think we all kind of started to realize that at that point that this money couldn't buy happiness, right? This lifestyle that she was living, and then ultimately when she took her own life, at that time I was 24 years old, but from I would say 8th grade until when she eventually did, it was, people now knew. People were now aware. I think that she kind of struggled with that embarrassment as well, and she just really fed more into feeding her lifestyle, and we could see it. But I think because now we were made aware of that, she was struggling on the inside, and I feel like overall the one thing that I've been able to really realize is that it doesn't matter. There is no buying happiness, and investing in things, materialistic things it won't bring it. You really have to go into really that internal side, and unfortunately, I don't think she had people to talk to about that, and we didn't know how. I wish I knew what I knew today. Again, I'm a daughter, so I say, you can't necessarily save people, but you do wish that, man, our family and people around her had the education and the resources and things like that we do today.
So good. So good.
I'm so happy you said, I'm sorry, but I'm so happy you spoke on, just our society's addiction to consumerism. I think a lot of times we point the finger at drug addicts, or people who are addicted to drugs, or use drugs as a coping mechanism. But we all have our vices, and who's to say one's better than the other, one's worse than the other? That addiction to shopping and is a real thing. I was just talking about it yesterday to a friend. Also, our addiction to food, there's so many things that we can be addicted to. And I'm so happy you pointed that out, and the importance of like turning inward rather than looking outward for satisfaction and joy. We really should be turning inward because we really have all that we need, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. When you said like our image on the outside look a certain way, but for real, like your household and all, like really things were just not right? You knew, even like you saying, you thought it was like, oh, I had these Louis bags or whatever the case. And I'm just thinking about like just recently, like Kate Spade and This Is You. There was a Black director, and she was leading this great show, like this bomb.com show, right? And then she boom, then took her life, and everybody like, oh my, I wish her, but she was in her own way through tweeting and everything else, asking like, I'm not handling this isolation due to COVID. I'm having issues with being here because I'm not. See, directing might have been her medicine at that time to kind of try to get those suicidal thoughts away. Leading this great show, This Is Us. But here you are, you're not working right now. You in your own thoughts. You're just, we have to stop normalizing dysfunction, like things that don't look right. Like we have to stop normalizing, like we see it. So that's what I mean by those silent cries. It's right there in our face, and we just take a little moment to really stop making excuses for it and stop normalizing what dysfunction and something mentally that don't look right. That person's off. Their mood is different, or they talking a little crazy. Stop normalizing that. Then maybe we can reach out and help a little more. Are you okay? Do you need me to come sit with you? Do you need me to be there with you? If you just stop normalizing what that looks like and really start making importance on the mental wellness, because that part alone right there, like how much you just ignore what you really do see, like you're saying, something ain't right here with my mom, or something ain't, like if you didn't have that support, Ms. D, where they saying, you know what, I'm going to do a wellness check. I got a call from my daughter. I was at work, and she said she stayed home because she knew that she was going to try to take her life. And I said, well, she said, I'm not feeling well. And I said, okay, went on to work. But I spoke, I'm that person that advocates. So I talked to someone that was in my circle within the church, and she reached out to me. She said, I don't know what's going on, but your daughter's posting some things on social media that just don't sound right. I jumped on. I said, I tell you what I need you to do. Go to my house, knock on my door. If she do not answer that door, I need you to call the police at that moment, and, to let them know that she has a mental, her history. That's what saved her life that day. She took some pills, it happened. She did it, but she was able to get the help she need, immediately, to keep her alive. You understand? So it's like, you have to, if they ignored it and was like, I don't know, girl, I ain't got time for that. She, her daughter be tripping, whatever, like, ignored it. It could have been that moment that my daughter wouldn't be here. We got to start speaking up for each other. Stop turning away. I'm telling you, stop normalizing, stop acting like it's okay to be. I'm gonna leave that right. You got something to say?
I was over here because I'm trying to like the story I have too. It was, we didn't stop. Like, the people didn't stop them, and it's like, because in addition to the normalizing and dismissing, and 100%, it's okay to not be okay, right?
Yes.
But it's like, at the same time, we got to stop adding, like, even Angela, you spoke about it a little bit of how people knew your mom was feeling this way, and almost like labeled her and looked at her differently. Like, how are we going to, again, try to get help when we're the ones stigmatizing, labeling, and treating them differently, right? And so it's like, literally, I'm from not a small town, I'm from a big city, but all the Black people know each other, right? Everybody is entangled in church and in these spaces. And I went to middle school with these two kids who were, we lost touch because it was middle school, but my sister kept in touch with the daughter and actually had lunch with her 2 weeks before this happened. And everyone knew that the mom was bitter over the divorce, and that's how they labeled it. Bitter over the divorce, upset, can't, he's remarried, it's been 15 years, you still wearing the ring, dead over it, what's your problem? Like, everyone would label her that way, and everyone knew. Same thing, that there were mental health concerns. A week after finds out that the father is remarried in these things, no one still knows exactly, but a week after, she took her children's lives and then took her own life.
Oh my, see?
And these were kids that were my age, 25, 22, in college, and took both of her adult children's life and took her own life. And if we hadn't have labeled, had stigmatized, had talked bad about her as a bitter ex-wife, if we had given her help, and that's exactly like what you just said, it's like, in addition to normalizing and not dismissing, we need to stop stigmatizing.
That's it. That stigma alone. And like you said, quick to label. There's so many cases. I know y'all hear it about the killing the children and then killing themselves. And it was just recently, even the single mom, she left her children here, but she left. She said, I'm done. I can't do this by myself. Like you're saying, just stop being quick to gossip or talk about the drama or the things that people are going through, because everyone is quick. See, that's where you get to the part of mental health, right? How we just look at it as mental illness. But for real, all of us are like away from having a moment that we're not right because of divorce, or you lose a job, or you going through something and you just off and you just need help for that moment. Instead of just like, the stigmas is ridiculous. Instead of just saying, you know what, like you saying, talking about it, but you know what, maybe if I can just go over there and let her talk it out, or whatever the case is, that hurts. It hurts. And now they're probably the same ones like, dang.
And we're really up in church doing this. We're up in church,
come on,
to each other, gossiping. Like, how are we in the
you say something big?
Like, that's what gets me, right? So I hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I'm going to go to this next question and so Black mental wellness and organizations alike aim to reduce the stigma around mental illness and suicide in the Black community by providing culturally sensitive information and resources. What are some ways in which virtual, like we're doing it similar, mental health advocates and initiatives can improve their discussion and material around suicide?
Yeah, I can jump in here real quick. I think one, awareness panels like this, right? Having these discussions really allow for us to have like the conversation needed around. But as far as like materials, and this is where, I mean, we've heard in my bio as well, but there is a company called A Kids Book About, and they do have a kid's book about suicide, depression, anxiety, which is really kind of helps, bring those conversations around for, especially if you're a counselor or therapist for early age kids. I would say like that 5 to 10 year olds is it really allows for just, there's different, those different topics. And also, like, for example, my book, has a section in there that, talks about, that you would be greatly missed. And a counselor reached out to me probably about 2 weeks ago and said, hey, I had a student struggling one day, and I brought him in, and I had him read that page and write down, who would all miss you, and so, really put in those books, like, into practice. So that's just one way that I thought about immediately when I seen that.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
I'm still stuck on the last question.
I was going to read some of the comments though. Like I was like, they're like, listen, that compassion and empathy, like when it does go along, and that's the whole thing. Like even empathy, like being able to come out of just ready to label and gossip, but really jumping on like, hey, I'm putting myself in your shoes. You're really at that part, compassion and empathy. I'm like looking at the comments like, yes, y'all. So yeah, but I was kind of still stuck there. I was like, let's move a little bit. But I would jump in and say I agree with Mrs. Frazier, just saying opening up the platform and really just having those uncomfortable conversations. These are very uncomfortable. We're so quick to talk about, self-care. I'm sorry, like meditation and yoga. But let's talk about these blackouts. So when I am having suicidal ideation, maybe someone who came out on the other side that's thriving, and doing better. What did that look like on their journey of getting to that point that they're thriving? You didn't just jump right into it. Like being able to have those uncomfortable conversations that someone's, not just telling your story, but really like showing that they're, like you saying, it's okay not to be okay, but it's okay to get the help so that you can get to that part that you are thriving, and you're doing better on that place of dealing with those sort. Because I've heard sometimes, the suicide ideations may not completely go away. I've heard that it's just the point that you're not acting on it. You're just at a better place, and those coping skills to really be able to get on the way. I see some questions here. We're going to address. In the Q&A. So we can go into some of these questions just so they won't get overlooked. And since we're talking about the school age and everything, so as a person dealing with school age children and education, when is it appropriate to speak on suicide? Is there an age, a grade, or something that address when a situation arises?
I can say my for the company that I wrote about starts at age about 5. I'm not sure, I don't work with school age kids or kids really right before to know if they'd be able to comprehend that 3 and 4. But our books are really geared towards kind of 5 and up. And I think that seems to be kind of right at that kindergarten, first grade age, to where they're able to at least kind of grasp the subject a little bit. And it's just positive to hear, affirmations around, you would be missed, or your life has purpose, and just kind of feeding kids just those positive affirmations early on. I don't think can hurt in that way.
Ms. Brooks, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I didn't know if Naisha, I feel like, did you? Okay. Well, yeah, I was going to say as well, just in the work that I've done research wise and clinical wise, we're seeing children under 10 taking their own life.
Mm-hmm.
This is, like Angela's saying, starting from a very young age. And if part of this is going to be increasing awareness. Sure, we're not going to do it in the same way, right, as a 15-year-old, but I do think some conversations around what, if we know like hopelessness or these things, right? Obviously, we're not using these terms, but we know what goes into that, right? Whether it's peers, whether it's loving ourselves, whether it's these things, right? And so figuring out ways to create those kind of conversations to make sure at least like that is happening, right? That we're loving ourselves, that we're enjoying ourselves, that we like who we are, like trying to facilitate that so that we know. I think that's a way, you know, we could do it with younger kids as well. But I definitely think that conversations about mental wellness need to start from that age so that we're more aware when things happen, so that our kids feel more comfortable coming to us when they deal with peers and bullying or things like that, right? So yeah, I agree.
I can just speak for my daughter. I can remember before she got to 12, when she had, I'm 13, when she had her first attempt at suicide. I can remember her being young, saying stuff like, I hate this, I hate it. And if you just kind of like, I hate this house, I hate this, you know, whatever it is, like, it was just like she had no love. You know, it was like she had those moments where it was just like it was nothing here that made her feel good. And he's like, but you got, and I started saying, you got all this. And I was that mom, was like, she was spoiled. You got every Barbie you can think, or no, Brett. You got every Brett doll you can think of, and you got this, and you know, I'm naming like how you blessed. You got, look at your closet. You got all these clothes, and you got all these shoes. This is a mom that I'm not educated on it now. I had no idea, know nothing about it, but I'm just feeling like you're just ungrateful. You understand what I'm saying? So just even like you said, Mrs. Brooks, just learning the child's language, like, because they're not going to come out and probably be like it would if someone was older and just be like, you know, I want to let you know what that's what it means by getting to know your child, or even as teachers, really taking your job seriously, really pay attention. I thank God for one teacher who actually asked me, and I was one of those parents like, what, depressed? She asked me, do you think your daughter's depressed? And at that time, she was like 8. No, she just want attention. She just, you know, because she would sleep on the floor and sleep in the principal's office and want to be on the floor like I didn't know. I looked it up and I'm like, what? You know, but at that time, instead of getting or really seeking, I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I need to pay. I was that parent. It was just like, you know, labeling. I can admit it. I do better because I know better, but that's the importance of getting to educate yourself on, what it is, what mental wellness look like for a child, you know, because it looks so much different.
And I'm really glad you mentioned that. Just to echo one last thing is not internalizing it on the parents end, because I think like what you said, when they're that young, we think it's our fault, right? We think it's we're not doing enough. Like we're so afraid of other people labeling it. But I do think that's another factor. When it's these young children, we think that they're too young to be depressed. They're too young. They're trying to do these things, and it's a sign that we're not training them right, or they're acting out, or they, you know. So I feel like being aware that it's not on us as parents, and it's not our fault if our kids are depressed at that age, right? That this is our job to help get them help, not to deny it, not to dismiss it, not to make it about us. Right. So I think that's another thing that's easy to do, right?
And in the beginning, yeah, I went down the list trying to figure out what did I do wrong. So saying that is so true. So any parents is listening, like, remove yourself and really make it about the child and what they're experiencing and try to figure it out.
And to add to that real quick, I know Ms. Brooks, I kind of touched on it around that, you know, kids taking their life as young as 10. I want to put a statistic to that suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34. So if that's not enough encouragement to say, like, you know, if they're taking their lives at 10 years old, well, hey, if I need to start at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like, I'm going to start beforehand, because they're hearing about it. The risk factors are already occurring, such as, you know, like you mentioned, the bullying at school that's taking place. And when they're saying things like Miss Powell was saying around, you know, hate or frustration, and just, you know, learning that language of kids as early on. I mean, you know, it's just important to just kind of take action early.
The way they explain it'll be so different from a way of adult tells how you feel, you know. So that's why you can't take the short answers. How you doing? They go, okay, like, talk to me. Let's elaborate, but not just while you're cooking, not while you're busy, but really giving them your undivided attention. So while we're here, the next question we have from one of our attendees, they said, how do we make sure to create an environment in school buildings where our kids don't feel like they're being judged and getting them comfortable to rely and trust on at least one adult?
That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think about conversations, those, and I, kind of, I think about when my mom used to, like I mentioned, she drove me to school, and just kind of having those conversations around, oh, how, or on the way home, how was your day? And who did you hang out with today? And, who did you sit with at lunch? And what teachers were you involved with? Just things like that, just to, also knowing who are the counselors at the school, and who are the, security guards. We had, different, I don't know if the title was security guards back then, but, we had the people who kind of police the hallways, and things of that sort. And just knowing, I think as a parent, knowing who's around your kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think I like to say, a good amount of us are a good judge of character, being able to say, like, oh, your counselor's name is Nicole, and that's someone that you can go and talk to if you're having a tough day, or if you need to stay in a little a little later before or after recess to talk to your teacher, or the lunch lady, just things of that sort. Just kind of really knowing who's there and who they're involved with, and letting them know that these are the resources that they have at their school.
Yeah, I think, this is a great comment. I would say the world so hinders our children freely expressing themselves. We as parents can read their retreat to themselves as response to the pressure of the world around them. We instinctively want them to push against the oppression and not succumb it. Great point. We always, and that's back. I think if we take a moment and really spend time with them, that's how we can encourage conversation. Because when we just making it quick, like really digging, not forcing them, but even while they're kind of into their thing. I even heard males say while they playing a game, that's when they have conversation with their sons, because they talking, but they, so they don't feel like they really too much being vulnerable, but they express, they talking to their dad, but it's like, oh yeah. So they playing the game together, but they having conversation. And then we also have here, I think this is a good one. I think we also think if we talk about it, we are planting the seed or encouraging it. How do you all feel about that? So talking to a young child or someone who might have heard of quote unquote the word suicide, do you feel that that's planting the seed or encouraging it?
I think for anyone, really, it's important, not just children, but adults too, to call it like we see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be open and honest about it. Because unfortunately, in our culture, as a Black culture, we're so quick to brush things under the rug and dismiss it. And we know that if we turn a blind eye to things, nothing gets done that way. So actually being and saying, like, hey, are you feeling suicidal?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Are you feeling like you're going to hurt yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I think, we're so used to kind of eating our emotions and not feeling, especially Black men. And I don't know if there's any Black men in this conference today, but, we talk about children and the development of children and, what parents can do. And I remember growing up, we used to tell young boys, suck it up, don't cry. That's not what men do. So we really have to be cognizant and aware about those cultural norms that we try and put on to people, especially our children, because those Black boys are going to grow up to be Black men, right? And if they can't express, if they're told that they're weak for expressing their emotions, and if we as Black women feel like we're weak for expressing our emotions, then how can we be emotionally well? There's no way we can do it if we keep telling ourselves we have to be the strong Black woman. We can't be weak. We can't show emotion. We can't cry. We can't need a day of rest. No, I'm going to take my day of rest. I sure will. And I will say no. I'm not saying yes to everything.
Yes.
Those things are self-care too. And they're kind of hard to do. I think people assume that this healing journey and this wellness journey is like glitz and glam and it's so easy. No, saying no can be hard. because you could be afraid of the resentment that might come. But it's like a muscle. You just have to keep practicing it. But I think, you know, as a community, we have to start talking about it and being open about it and honest about it, and take the shame out of it.
Yes, removing the shame. Yes, Ms. Brooks, you want to add?
Oh yeah, I mean that point at the end was really
that was
like if we shy away from it, that's perpetuating this idea that you need to be afraid of feeling it or that you should be ashamed of feeling it, right? Versus if we start it early, right? But it's like, it's so interesting to me that people put suicide and mental health in this category, but then it's like, you know, let's look at the stuff that they're doing about racism, right? Trying to ban us from talking about racism in school or race. Like, it's like, we talk about those things, right? We're not planting the seed that you're going to become this aggressive, labeled, misjudged person, right? But we're preparing them. Right. But it's seen as something that's less stigmatizing or okay to do. Right. It's the same thing. We're preparing our kids for the reality of being Black in this country. We're preparing them to admit mental health and to recognize when it's a thing as well. Right. And so just being aware that if we're not doing that, that's going to communicate that message. And also going even back to that school thing, we can't control what kids are seeing these days with social media, with phones, with the access to shows like 13 Reasons Why, right? Like, we don't even know these things are happening now. And so that's why it's even more on us to just preemptively bring up these things, right? And just assume that if we're creating it in a safe way and showing them these resources, that it's not going to be the first time they're hearing about suicide. And that's going to mean like, oh, now I can look at pills, right? Or things like that. Like, we're preparing them for this reality. And that's why we do it in ways when they're younger about more love-centered things and just growing our self-love and having those kind of talks, right? But yeah, I was going to agree there too.
Yeah, so good, so good. We must, Dawn said, agree. We must have open and transparent communication about suicide. Absolutely, that is one way that we can reduce the suicide rate. Having those conversations, we have to move past the fear. Kimberly says we have to move past the fear of not asking and discussing in general about suicide, becoming more comfortable with holding space for conversation around helplessness, and I would say hopelessness, even ideation versus actions. And I know I'm gonna squeeze one more question, and then it kind of ties into this. The topic of suicide should be approached with care and compassion. It is important to be mindful of your language when discussing suicide in personal and professional spaces. How can we encourage those around us to avoid stigmatizing terms when having conversations about suicide?
I'll start.
Okay.
I just want to touch on just how people talk about suicide in general. So a lot of people use the term committed suicide, and the term committed very much so gives off that it's a crime. And so instead for me, and I think that's just really easy to say somebody committed suicide. It's people, that's just what we've heard. But instead using language like, I say, you know, my mom took her own life, or I say my mom died by suicide. So just around just the proper language and not making it seem as if someone has committed this crime. It's just, you know, just kind of having just overall better ways of how we talk about it.
Anyone else want to chime in there?
I mean, I think, you know, when I opened up about my story in 2018, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to open up about their own personal mental health story, because that is your personal information. You don't have to share it with the world. That's just how I decided to do it, because at that point I had lost a 5th family member to suicide, and I was like, enough is enough. I am like tired. I'm sick and tired of losing family members. I'm sick and tired of hearing about friends and their family losing people. I'm going to speak up about it. And I think that, you know, with the pandemic happening in 2020, you know, mental health has kind of come to the forefront, thankfully, finally. And we are now talking about the importance of it, right? Because, you know, dealing with COVID as a medical pandemic, we are now on the brink. We currently are in a mental health pandemic. More people are looking to see a therapist than ever before. I work in Boston helping to connect people with therapists, so I see it firsthand. So thankfully, as a culture, we are getting there.
Mhm.
And, I'm thankful for spaces like this where we can talk openly and honest about it. And I think this is such a great space to kind of talk and get educated about, how to go about things, coming from the clinical perspective, coming from the lived experience perspective, and understanding kind of like best practices. And, if you are not in a position to talk about it, right? Because like you said, Nikita, like some of this stuff can be scary. Somebody tells you, they're suicidal. You're like, oh my God, I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to know that, right? So only asking questions that you're prepared to hear the answers for, I think is really key. And, as a person who might be feeling, like you're suicidal or you might be struggling, having like your go-to people that you feel safe with, because I can say you're safe with me, but if you don't feel safe with me, you don't feel safe with me. And I can't tell you to feel safe with me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Safety is a you thing, right? So having those people that you're connected with that you can feel safe with. But really, how I talk about suicide is through my own personal experience, because no one has that but me, and I have ownership of that. And from there, people will talk to me about their own situations.
So I would just encourage everyone, even if you have not personally or a family member have personally been impacted by suicide, and I always say that is just education is key. Language is absolutely key. They don't say committed now, they just say maybe died by suicide or something like that. So language is key too, but I would say education, not just the signs, but the risk factors, because I think too, the just like I say, with me being a mom or just having other people in my circle or just like have suicidal ideations, or people I came up with, how they, you thinking it only hits certain people or it only affects certain people, only certain people can be suicidal. And some of the risk factors they even talk about, like relationships with divorce. Let's even talk about the teenagers who in these relationships may be abusive. One may, take the girlfriend and take the boy, take himself. Even a history of, like you're saying, like I just heard you say you have several family members. That's a risk factor when it's in your family, that it's a history of it. Yes, sometimes substance abuse lead to it, and maybe even the environmental violence, maybe some dysfunction in your household, setbacks. I talked about that, right? Setbacks in your life, how it just throw you completely off and you think you can't make it to the next day. You're not going to make it. And I'm going to say something that's key, even severe or prolonged stress, because all of us deal with stress. Like I love that you said the unhealthy, creating those healthy boundaries of saying no and self-care, but all of us deal with stress. And if we see, oftentimes we want to go when it's crisis to get therapy, or when we really messed up, that's when we want to get therapy. But how about just get therapy because you're so stressed, and you're unable to manage it? That can easily get you to a point that you're like, I'm just done. I'm done with all this. I don't even want to do this anymore because it's so overwhelming. Just that sense of feeling powerless and hopeless and feeling like you don't have no control over whatever that is that's going on in your life. So that's the part that, because we just want to put suicide in a box, like you have to be in this crisis or the mental illness or whatever that is, that it's a really big thing, but it can be those small things that can pile on and pile on and pile on that just make a person say, I'm done, work related. They can lose a job. And this, like, I've been trying to find a job for 6 months. I got a whole family of 5 to feed, for men. I got to feed my children and I don't even know. And they just like, you know what, they'll be better off without me. You understand? So I just think, like you're saying, stop running away from that word suicide, still creating these spaces like this so we can just talk about it. So when people hear that word suicide, they're not running like, oh, scringing, like, oh my gosh, they didn't go saying that, that crazy word, or what, how it's so ugly, instead of just saying, let's talk about it, so I think this is great. We're coming up, like, we're right there. I thought our person was going to jump on. We covered, I want to see if we had any more Q&A in there, but I feel like we covered the questions. I squeezed them in there as we were going. Yes, we did. Thank you, everyone. This has been awesome. I look forward to more conversation like this. I definitely do this on my platform. Thank you to thank you to the panelists for this open and candid conversation. We appreciate your insight and lived experiences. Oh, well, thank you all. Thank you for joining us. And thank you all for being transparent. This has been really, really good. So I don't know if I'm supposed to do the closing remarks. I'm sorry. Oh, she's gonna come back on here. I'm not sure because I thought she's gonna jump back on here, but okay, there we go. I was like,
I was gonna let you close it out, but I'm
okay. I didn't know. I just want to be obedient because I was ready.
No, you're doing awesome. Thank you so much.
I was ready to close it. Okay.
I love your energy, so I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Well, just like I said, I just want to say, everyone, just big. That's the big key part. I want to say, just educate yourself. All of us here is even sometimes mental health. People don't look for it. For myself, it came, like you said, for Miss D, it came to us. But then there's those who don't have it in their family and don't have it within them, like and around them. But don't let that be that you won't educate yourself. Because for that neighbor, like Ms. Brooks talked about, or that person in your school or in your job or whatever, educate yourself so you can understand what it is. How do people get to that point for suicide? So you can feel good that you were able to help the next person. And that's what I want to leave it on. So blessings and love to all of you all who have joined us. We thank you so much. And I think this was a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.